Hey everyone, welcome back to AskReddit with a new episode of Reddit Stories, the place where you'll find the best posts and comments from the front page of the internet. I create new videos daily for all you Reddit lovers, so don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. Today's story is called, What's Your Worst Experience with the Neighbor? I had a neighbor who liked to burn his garbage. We had moved in during winter and he'd made some bonfires outside. Nothing major. Not a big deal. Well, summer rolls around and I swear to God, he'd gather garbage all week just to get hammered and burn it all. At night, during the day, first thing in the morning, he was a burner. After weeks of this happening in 100-degree weather, my wife and I had enough. We couldn't afford air conditioning and had to leave open windows at night. We just had a baby and smoke would literally billow into our house. I ran out and told him we'd like it if he stopped burning trash every day. He says, my property, I can do what I want. Needless to say, this didn't fly with us. I secretly photographed him dumping trash in his yard for the next couple weeks and burning it. Then I sent it into the fire and police departments. They showed up a couple weeks later as he was starting a fire and issued him a citation. Apparently, I wasn't the only one sick of his crap. They had numerous complaints on him. He ended up separating from his wife and moving out a few weeks later. Never had another fire or smoke issue. Feck that guy. I lived in a loft apartment, which was the top floor of a warehouse. The heating company that rented the big warehouse below my bedroom moved out, and a biker gang rented the space to store their equipment, according to the landlord. Actually, it was their party space. They would blast music all night, even on weekdays. Then get on their bikes and roll out, usually around 6 or 7 a.m. We had regular Jerry Springer moments on the street outside. When I complained to them, they blew me off. The landlord did too. When we called the police, which we did often, as did many of the neighbors, they also blew us off. Weeks of nightly calls resulted in the cops showing up once. Finally, one Friday night, I get home from work around 1:30 a.m., and it was strangely quiet. I go up to my apartment and my roommates are laughing and drinking a beer. Hey buddy, you missed the fun. They then told me in detail how a bunch of police rolled in, cuffed everyone at the party, and hauled them out in wagons. Do you know why? I asked. They both smiled and passed me a flyer for the party they found. It said Christmas in July and was a picture of a dollar bill with a snowman on it. Turns out bikers were throwing coke parties directly below my bedroom. Finally got busted for a complete lack of subtlety. Over 30 years ago, when I was in my late 20s and single, I moved into a flat below a married couple in the Scottish borders. Over the first few months, I could hear constant loud shouting and swearing, principally from the husband, as they were arguing. Finally, one Friday night at about 10 p.m., I could hear the sound of the wife being struck repeatedly. I didn't know what to do, but after about 10-15 minutes of screaming and what sounded like slapping and kicking, I decided to go up to their door. I knocked the door and when it opened, I saw the wife laying on the floor bleeding around the mouth and face. Before I could say anything, the husband shouted and swore at me and spat in my face, then slammed the door. I experienced the purple haze. I stormed down the stairs to my flat and grabbed the first thing inside the door. Probably, fortunately, it was my squash racket. I went back upstairs and hammered on the door. When it was open this time, I gave him a full-blooded blow to the face and down he went. Then I stood over him, screaming and inviting him to get back up. Thankfully, he didn't, as by then I think I had completely lost control. My parting shot as I left, mainly because of my anger, was to tell him that if he laid a finger on the wife again, I would be back. I never spoke to either again, and understood from other sources they separated very soon after. My squash was never the same again. If you're enjoying this episode of Reddit Stories, please leave a comment below. Tell me what you think about this video, share your story, or a story you've heard from a friend. I had a neighbor whose dog stayed out all night, and it barked. All night. I mean all night. I couldn't sleep very much, it was making me crazy. I went over to talk to them after I got off my shift one night. It was about 11 p.m. and the dog had just started up its nightly routine. They came to the door in pajamas, so apparently they could sleep through it. I told them it was keeping me from doing my job well, as I was terribly sleep deprived. I told them I can't use earplugs all night, as I had some ear injuries from playing rugby, and why should I have to anyway? I begged them somehow to stop the dog from barking all night, bring it in, put on a shock collar, anything. Nope. So one night I decided to take matters into my own hands. I put on my black clothing, used my army face paint to camo my face and arms, then I grabbed my super soaker and crawled across the yard at like 2 a.m. I set up the shot and waited. As soon as the dog started barking, I hit it with a nice stream of water. I only had to do that 3 nights in a row until he finally stopped. My neighbor came over and woke up my husband several days a week to complain about how our tree had roots growing in her yard. My husband worked nights, so this was extra crappy. She claimed that they were a tripping hazard and her dog would hurt a paw on them. Then she claimed that they were in a drainage easement and blocked it. She called parish services to look and told us that she was calling the mayor himself about our villainous tree roots. When she threatened to get a lawyer, we got on the phone with the HOA and they sent an arborist. Obviously, the mayor didn't come to look at our tree. Parish services did, and there was no easement between our houses. The arborist said our tree was fine, and that the HOA could sue if she dug up the roots herself and killed it. While parish services was in our yard, they found that the trees at her back of the property were causing drainage problem that contributed to mosquito problems. So in the end, her trees were trimmed, at the cost to her, by the demand of the Department of Mosquito Abatement, and the HOA sent her a nastygram to leave us and our tree roots alone. I called it a win. The day after we moved into our new home, our neighbor poked her head over the backyard fence and said, "I hope you're going to cut down that tree." The tree in question was a 50-foot, 50-year-old gorgeous maple. I really didn't know what to say. I guess I just mumbled something. She kept up the same question for a few years. She didn't like the tree because the leaves got into her pool. Never mind that her backyard is surrounded by other trees too. Well, one day, I happened to glance out my kitchen window, which faces the back. There was a truck with a cherry picker on her side of the fence, prepping to cut a huge split limb off the tree. The limb was actually half of the tree. So I screamed at him to stop, and the neighbor cursed me. That was a big mistake. I called the cops and said the magic words, "Neighbor dispute." They showed up in 2 minutes and kicked the guy and his truck off the neighbor's property and told her not to do it again. We haven't spoken in about 20 years, and it's no loss to me. I think the worst neighbor we ever had was an old next-door neighbor to us in an apartment. It started the day we moved in. To get to our apartment from the parking lot, you had to take a narrow footbridge as you entered on the second floor of the apartment. She yelled at us because we parked our truck in front of the side walkway so we could unload. She came home yelling about how space next to it was hers, and we had to move the truck now. Okay, no big deal. Except we were told there was 0 assigned parking, and 0 spaces left for our truck. Not to mention, she was parked in her other space and lived alone, so only had 1 car. She called the office and they sent security, and told her space wasn't hers, just because she wanted it, and they have never had assigned parking. Apparently this made her mad. She made it her mission to make us miserable. She constantly called the office on us for noise complaints, even though we'd literally be doing nothing. Eventually, the complex got tired of it and called the actual cops. They asked us what we were doing, and we told them we were sitting on the opposite side of the apartment, playing a game. She admitted to the cops that the only reason she could hear us is that she had her ears pressed against the wall. Luckily, the cops didn't appreciate them being called out for a non-existent noise complaint and issued her a ticket. We never had a problem with her again. Thanks for watching today's episode of Reddit Stories. Leave a comment and tell me what you think about this video. Share your story, and if you want to see more of this, please like and subscribe to my channel.